It was just another cold morning when she saw him again. The old man sat on the same wooden bench outside the small grocery store, his coat too thin for the wind, his hands trembling as he tried to count a few coins. People walked past him every day. Some glanced. Most didn't, but she always stopped. Her name was Emily Carter, 28 years old, working 2 part-time jobs, living in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a heater that only worked when it felt like it. She didn't have much. Still, every morning before her shift at the cafe, she brought him a cup of hot coffee and half of her sandwich. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she'd say with a soft smile. And every morning, his tired eyes would light up like she had just handed him the world. "Emily," he'd reply gently, "you're too kind to an old man." "No," she'd laugh, "I'm just returning the favor." He would always look confused when she said that, because years ago, when Emily was 16 and sleeping in her car after losing her mother, it was Mr. Thompson who found her crying in that same parking lot. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge. He simply gave her $20 and said, "Sometimes the world forgets good people. Don't let it change you." She never forgot. Now he was the one alone. Every day she helped him, bringing food, sitting beside him, listening to stories about his late wife, about the house he used to own, about the grandson he hadn't seen in years. "He's busy," Mr. Thompson would say, whenever she asked. "Big lawyer in the city. Important things." But sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, his smile would fade. One afternoon, the sky turned gray and heavy rain began pouring down. Emily rushed from her cafe shift and found him drenched, still sitting on the bench. "Mr. Thompson," she gasped, running to him. "You can't stay here." He tried to wave her off. "I'll be fine." "You won't," she said firmly. That was the day she made a decision that changed everything. She brought him home. Her apartment was small, 1-bedroom, tiny kitchen, but she made space on the couch, brought him dry clothes, cooked soup from what little she had. For the first time in months, he slept in a warm bed. Days turned into weeks. Emily helped him apply for assistance programs. She took him to doctor appointments. She listened when he felt forgotten. She treated him not like a burden, but like family. The neighbors whispered, "Why is she bringing that old homeless man inside? She barely has money for herself." But Emily didn't care. Then one morning, everything changed. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside her apartment building. It looked completely out of place in the cracked parking lot. 2 men in expensive suits stepped out. Behind them, a tall, sharp-featured man in his early 30s, wearing a tailored coat and carrying an air of authority. He looked furious. Emily opened the door cautiously when they knocked. "Yes." "We're looking for Harold Thompson," one of the suited men said. Her heart skipped. "He's resting." "Who are you?" The younger man stepped forward. "I'm Daniel Thompson, his grandson." Silence filled the doorway. Mr. Thompson slowly appeared behind her, leaning on a cane. When his eyes met the younger man's, something complicated passed between them. Hurt, pride, distance. "Daniel," the old man whispered. Daniel's expression hardened when he saw his grandfather's worn sweater, the tiny apartment, the second-hand furniture. "Why is he here?" he demanded. "Why isn't he in his house?" Emily blinked. "House?" Daniel looked at her sharply. "You don't know?" "Know what?" The lawyer stepped inside, and that's when the truth unfolded. Harold Thompson wasn't just some forgotten old man. He was the original founder of Thompson and Reed Holdings, a multi-million-dollar property development company. Years ago, after his wife died, he stepped away from the business and signed most control over to his son. After a family fallout and legal disputes, Harold left quietly, but he was never poor. He still owned significant shares, assets, trust funds. Daniel had been searching for him for weeks after discovering irregularities in the company accounts. The board needed Harold's signature to prevent a hostile takeover. "And we find him," Daniel said coldly, "living in this situation." Emily's face burned. "I didn't know," she said softly. "He never told me." Harold looked at her gently. "Because you treated me the same without knowing." Daniel turned to her. "How long has he been staying here?" "A few weeks." "And you've been paying for his food?" His medicine? She nodded. Daniel's jaw tightened. Why? He asked. Emily looked confused. Because he needed help. That's it. Daniel pressed. She swallowed. Years ago, when I had nothing, he helped me. I'm just paying him back. The room fell silent. One of the lawyers quietly cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, the board meeting is tomorrow. We need you back in the city. Daniel stepped closer to his grandfather. You should have called me. Harold's voice trembled but remained steady. You were always busy. For the first time, Daniel looked ashamed. He glanced around the small apartment again. The chip table. The simple blanket, folded neatly on the couch. The grocery receipt with carefully calculated totals. Then he looked at Emily. You didn't ask him for money? He asked quietly. No. You didn't know who he was? No. And you let him stay here anyway? Yes. Daniel exhaled slowly. He turned to the lawyers. Give us a moment. They stepped outside. Daniel faced Emily again, but his tone had changed. You have no idea how rare that is, he said. She shook her head. I didn't do anything special. He gave a small, almost disbelieving laugh. You did something my entire family failed to do. The next day, everything changed again. Harold returned to the company, but on his terms. The hostile takeover was stopped. Control shifted. And in a decision that stunned the board, Harold made two announcements. First, he reinstated himself as majority chairman. Second, he established a new foundation under the company's name, dedicated to housing and supporting the elderly who've been abandoned or forgotten. When reporters asked what inspired the initiative, he simply said, kindness from someone who had nothing to gain. A week later, Emily received a formal invitation to Thompson and Reed's headquarters. She almost didn't go, but when she stepped into the towering glass building, nervous and overwhelmed, she saw Harold smiling at her from across the lobby, and Daniel standing beside him. Harold took her hand. This company forgot its heart. You reminded us. Daniel stepped forward with an envelope. Inside was not money, not a check, but a job offer. Director of Community Outreach for the new foundation. A real salary. Benefits. Stability. You earned this, Daniel said. Not because of what you did for him, but because of who you are. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know anything about running a foundation, she whispered. Harold smiled warmly. You know how to care. That's enough. And just like that, the girl who once slept in a car was now leading a movement to ensure no elderly person would ever feel invisible again. But the biggest change wasn't the job. It was a look Daniel gave her as she stood confidently beside his grandfather during the foundation's launch. Respect, gratitude, and maybe something more. Because sometimes, when you help someone with no expectation of reward, life doesn't just repay you. It rewrites your entire story. And in this one, kindness was a plot twist no one saw coming.